Let's talk about the top 5 mistakes that turn a divorce from uncontested to contested. Avoid these mistakes and you will save yourself time. You're going to save yourself money and the stress of going through a litigated divorce. My name is Bobby Buchanan. I'm an Illinois divorce lawyer, and this is Illinois Divorce TV. So let's dive in. The number one mistake that people make when they are going through a divorce is poor communication with their spouse. Now, this is a catch-22, of course, because if you had good communication with your spouse, then there'd be a much the chances that you are going through a divorce would be much less. So there are probably some fundamental underlying communication issues, trust issues, and you two might be triggered easily by each other. So this is a tough one, but it is the most important one if you want to keep your divorce from going contested, from uncontested. Now, what do I mean specifically? Well, when you are doing an uncontested divorce, you have to agree on a lot of things, and you have to agree on more than just, are we getting divorced? That is the starting place. From there, you have to figure out how you're dividing everything. What is support going to look like? Is there going to be maintenance, also called alimony? How are you going to split up the kids? How are you going to co-parent together? All of these things require you two to communicate and work things out. What does poor communication look like? It looks like personal attacks. It looks like taking things personally, not being open and transparent about your needs and your wants, not active listening, not validating the concerns, the needs and wants of the other side. If you are able to keep things objective, and let's remember that you can only control what you can control. You can't control what your spouse, how they're going to react to things, but you can control how you communicate with them. And you have to practice all the tools of diplomacy. You have to word things in a way so it doesn't sound like you're pointing the finger. It doesn't sound like you're blaming the other side. All of that resentment and anger that you might have built up, you have to figure out how to compartmentalize that for the time being. If your spouse talks to you and you feel triggered, take that in and do not bounce it back to them. You got to push that to your support group, to your therapist, to your coach, somewhere else. Your job is keeping this communication as professional and cordial as possible. That is the building block of the uncontested divorce. The second mistake that people make is lack of transparency in financial aspects. In order to have an uncontested divorce, there has to be voluntary disclosure of financial information. One of the most common places that a contested divorce arises or comes from is when there is not voluntary disclosure of financial documents. And what does that really mean? Well, if you're going to have an agreed divorce, an uncontested divorce, then if I ask the other side as the attorney, well, we need the last 2 years of this bank account, you have to give it over. You have to just voluntarily say, okay, here it is. Or if I say, we want you to fill out a financial affidavit, a 10-page document that lays out in detail all of the liabilities, all the assets, all the liabilities, all of the income expenses that you have to do that on the other side, or we don't have an uncontested divorce. If you don't do that, then what I'm going to do is talk to my client and say, well, either you just are okay with taking their word for it as far as what's there, or we got to do discovery. And discovery is really the beginning of the contested divorce process, because you send over to the other side very particular, very annoying requests for documents. And though that tedious process of them having to answer those requests always triggers the other side sending you the same request. And before you know it, you're both spending $5,000-$10,000 on your lawyer compiling this very formal response to requests for documents, and you're turning over, all of these documents when in essence probably only 20 of them are actually relevant to getting a negotiated deal done that could have been turned over if you were just transparent with your documentation in the first place. So if you want to get that contested or that uncontested divorce done, you got to be open and transparent with your documentation. All right, number 3, unrealistic expectations. There is no way you're going to get your divorce done uncontested if you think you're going to have the children 100% of the time, or that you're going to get 80% of the equity in the house because you were the one who paid the mortgage, or that you're going to keep your retirement account because you're the one who earned it. That's not how divorce works. If you're going to negotiate a divorce, you have to understand the framework of the divorce process and the laws that underlie it. When we're talking about division of property, it's equitable division of the marital estate. Marital property usually isn't that hard to categorize. It's either marital or it's not. Sure, there's some gray area circumstances and there is some litigation over those areas at times, although you can negotiate around that as well. Every case can be negotiated. Nothing has to be litigated. So you have to understand the framework. Equitable division of marital property. What does that mean? In 95% of cases, that means that it's going to be a 50-50 split of the marital estate. A 50-50 split of debts that were acquired during the marriage. Now, there are special kinds of debts. For example, student loans sometimes are not split because the person benefiting from the student loan is they get to take all of that benefit with them. So sometimes it's just more natural, and judges agree with this, that they would be responsible for the student loans themselves. Judges sometimes split student loans as well. These are all areas where you have to be open to compromise and open to a good faith discussion about what should happen with them. When it comes to custody, when it comes to child support, what is realistic as far as logistics go? If you are working 80-hour weeks and you're traveling all the time, then don't try to come up with some crazy schedule that, you have the kids 50% of the time, but during your time, a family member is taking care of the kids or a nanny is taking care of the kids. A judge isn't going to go for that. So you have to be realistic in what is actually in the best interests of the children, and how can we figure out how to make this as smooth as possible and stable as possible for the kids. If you're just thinking about it in terms of, well, how can I pay the lowest amount of child support, then you're thinking about it in the wrong sort of way. You have to be able to put the kids first and have realistic expectations about what that means. Keep your expectations realistic, and then we're all going to be playing in the same ballpark. Number 4 is going to be inadequate legal representation or a poor understanding of the legal process. If you hire a lawyer that is not sophisticated in how they approach the divorce process, they might dive right into a litigation stance. They may be overly aggressive. They might not have the nuanced skill to broker a diplomatic resolution to your case. They may not be able to explain to you in clear terms the exposure that you have in the divorce process, which will allow you to negotiate with a more complete understanding of what kind of leverage you do or you don't have. So it's incredibly important that as you go into the divorce process, that you have counsel on your side that's able to explain and guide you through the process and to help you understand the limitations of your own position and areas where you may be able to push for compromise on the other side. And finally, number 5 is rushing the process. I know you want to get through this as quickly as possible. I know that this chapter in your life is one that you probably want to close the page on and get to the next chapter and see what it's all about, because there's a lot of pain here. But if you try to rush through this and you become anxious about the speed of this process, that you can't wait a few days or even a couple weeks or maybe a few weeks to get a response from the other side, or you get paranoid that they might be playing games, that you just want this done and over with, you have a much higher likelihood of making a decision that is going to blow up the case. You might go to your lawyer and say, I just want this done, I can't wait any longer, they're playing games. And your lawyer says, okay, well, we can push this forward. All we need to do is get you to fill out this financial affidavit, submit it, and then the clock starts ticking for them to do it. And if they don't do it, we file a motion or we serve them with discovery. And if they don't answer your discovery, we do a 201K letter, which tells the other side that they have X number of days to respond. And if they don't do that, we file a motion, sanctions, Or you know it, your attorney fees are going through the roof. Your case really hasn't progressed that much. The other side is taken aback by the fact that all of a sudden it's getting more litigated, and a litigated divorce always takes longer. So by wanting to rush the process, you've actually slowed things down and made it cost a lot more. So just take a breath, confer with your attorney, make sure you have a clear understanding. You guys have clear ideas of what you want to, what your goals are, what kind of timelines you're willing to put up with, what kind of timelines you're not, and be clear in communicating those timelines to the other side. You have to have a good faith negotiation, and in order to do that, there does have to be a back and forth. So communicating timing expectations with the other side can be really helpful as well. So those are the top 5 mistakes that if you can avoid, you will stay in the lane of the uncontested divorce. You will stay in the lane of saving time, money, and avoiding the stress of a litigated divorce. Don't forget to subscribe. Click the subscribe button, the bell, leave a comment, leave a question. Let us know what other videos you'd like to see, and we'll talk to you soon.